Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and now iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. Again, I am your host, DC Radical One, and you can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical, the numeral one. Again, that's dc.radical, the numeral one. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at dc underscore radical underscore ONE. That's at dc underscore radical underscore ONE. And tonight we have a special show because we are number one, we're coming on a special time. It's a special Saturday night edition of the center. And we're also going to have some guests. And what we're going to talk about is I called it what did I call it? Oh, ceasefire in the Black gender wars. And of course, it's so interesting that we would have this discussion. And one of the main things that everyone seems to be talking about is something that I don't want to talk about, which is, of course, some celebrity news between a Black couple. But I'm sure that will probably come up, but that's not what I want to talk about. But we are going to just have a frank discussion between Black men and Black women. And I have a couple of guests. I had 3 guests scheduled, but I have 2 who are here, and I'm going to bring them on shortly. But I just want to give some background to, in essence, what inspired this show. Oh, our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby, is here. Greetings to Sister Mello, and greetings to You Got Ripped Off. I don't know if that's a brother or sister, but they said a BB for Hodier and Straight Black Pride. So a BB for Hodier and Straight Black Pride to you. But one of the things that has been going on for a long time, and this is what happens sometimes. If something's not an issue for you, you don't recognize the seriousness of the issue. And then when you're in a situation where you can see it, you realize how big of a problem it is. And so the gender war between Black men and Black women, especially here on YouTube and social media in general, and on Twitter, as I talked about in a previous show with the Black feminists, is definitely an issue. And rarely do we have forums that I see anyway, where we can have frank discussion and dialogue with respect for everyone's experiences and opinions, and just general respect and love. So for those that know me offline in the real world, one of the things that I started, one of the programs I started for Straight Black Pride was the singles mixer. And the singles mixer, my idea of the singles mixer was originally to try to have a space where Black men and Black women could come together, preferably conscious, quote unquote, Black men and Black women, and could come together, meet in a no pressure space, get to know each other, interact with each other, and hopefully some connections would be made. And so that's something we've done for maybe a couple of years now. So, but that's an idea that I got from another organization. This idea, what we plan to do tonight, and we'll probably do a couple more times, is I also got this from that same organization. They had an event, I believe it was called Truce Between the Sexes or something like that. Had it a couple of times. They stopped doing it, and I decided to pick it up and take it and expand on it. So that's one thing about me. If I come to your organizational event and you have something and you stop doing it, but I think it can be successful, I'm going to take it, rebrand it, and utilize it. Just understand that for a fact. If it's a good idea and you're not going to use it, I'm gonna pick it up and use it. But I just feel like we need these type of spaces and we need these type of discussions. And since we're in the era of COVID where you can't do these types of things in person, I decided to do it here online on YouTube in a space where um, a lot of the vitriol and a lot of the discord between black men and black women takes place. So I decided to try to bring a different energy to uh, to this space, and that's what we're going to try to do tonight. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on my first guest. Bring on the brother first. I have a brother and a sister. I actually was scheduled to have two brothers and two sisters, but one of the sisters has not responded. I hope she didn't get mixed up as far as time because I don't think she's in my time zone. So, and then the other brother had a family situation he had to deal with, and those types of things happen. So first, I am going to bring on the brother and let him introduce himself. Give me a second. Brother, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Brother, introduce yourself, please, and give your social media information.
My name is Mr. Jones. That's my avatar right there. I am a teacher in North New Jersey. I teach engineering, and my social media information is at Blue Jersey 1914, and I could put it in the chat right here so everybody can follow me. Blue Jersey 1914. And so there it is right there. If you can see it in the private chat. If not, I can give that out. But it's BLUJERSEY 1914. And you can find me on Instagram and or Twitter. Um, I'm pretty, like I said, I teach engineering. I am a published author. My book is called The Elitist, and it deals with my undergraduate experience and how brothers and sisters back then have color complexes and issues in predominantly white campuses, and how that compares up to HBCUs, and how different brothers and sisters see each other. And I asked to be on tonight because this is a very passionate topic that I'm talking about, and it's a very hot topic, and I'm just glad to be here. Straight Black Pride to all you who know me in Straight Black Pride. So,
All right, brother. We appreciate that. I am going to send that out, and it's at Blue Jersey at Blue Jersey 1914. Is that correct?
right, exactly, but without the E between the U and J. It's BLUJERSEY, not BLULE, not like the color blue, but blue, just blue BLU. That's it.
All right, I got you.
All right.
And that is in the chat. And that's on Instagram.
Instagram and Twitter.
Instagram and Twitter.
Twitter, yes, absolutely.
And let me let people know that. Give me a second. Because I have different names on Instagram and Twitter because I've been kicked off of Twitter multiple times. I've been given the boot enough times that I had to have multiple variations of the same thing. So,
absolutely, that's pretty understandable in my opinion.
So, and that goes way back. I think I had that discussion on here with me, Twitter, and the feminists and all that. For those who listen to the show, you already know. Maybe one day I'll tell the whole Straight Black Pride story, but not this day. And also, my second guest that I am about to bring on. Give me a second and bring the sister on. Sister, are you there? Okay, we can't hear you. Let's see. Hold on. Sister, we having microphone issues. Okay, the sister's having technical issues, which is horrible for radio, of course. So while she's trying to figure that out, um, I see we have a handful of people in the building.
There we go.
All right, sister, you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So my name is Najee, Nefer Najee on Instagram, nefernajee.wordpress.com for my writings. I'm an advocate for African-centered self-directed education and previously a youth coordinator for the Pan-African Federalist Movement, Banneker City. Um, yeah.
Okay. And you got something going on in the background.
My son is back here, so that's why I had myself on mute because he's gonna be making noise.
Okay. All right. Now the object of the show was for people to well, here's the first question, and I wanted people to send in questions, and so far no one has sent in the question. But the way this is supposed to work is very
That's gonna
simple.
change.
I want the sisters to send in questions for the brother, and the brothers to send in questions for the sisters. Does everybody understand how that works? And
Absolutely.
then we'll let the panel have their say, and I will add my 2 cents to the mix. And like I said, originally this was supposed to be two brothers and two sisters, but we have a brother and a sister, and they're going to carry the weight of holding up their particular complementary gender. The beautiful thing about this here is that, unlike many places in America, there's no confusion here. We understand that men are men and women are women. So we don't have to have that argument or debate. Um, so I'm gonna ask the sister first. Say, what's the question? Someone asked, what's the question? No. Okay, brother. Now I'm saying you can ask, type in the chat the question, and we'll ask it to the panel. But I have a question for the sister, and I have a question for all the sisters that are here. Um, oh, hold up. She asked an excellent question for the brothers. All right, we'll go with this question first. This is an excellent question. First of all, let me state this: straight Black Pride rules are in effect. If you've never been to a straight Black Pride event, no N-word usage, no B's and H's usage. That includes in the chat and amongst the panel. Are we all clear on that part?
Yes, we are.
All right, got it. The sister said, what do brothers feel like is the biggest contributor to the gender divide? Now, brother, I know you got about 300 minutes worth of answers for that.
Oh,
However, hold on. We're going to try to limit this to about 5 minutes. You can begin now.
well, I'm glad that she asked that question. There's many factors contributing to the gender divide on both sides, especially within the Black community. With us brothers, we're being attacked at a young age through vaccinations, through being as a classroom teacher, being diagnosed with things early in life, not really having fathers around to really show who is men. Recently, my grandfather just passed away, but I am named after him. So I'm Donald Lee Jones III. And one thing about my grandfather is he led by example. He didn't say much, but he always got things done. Throughout the years, as the feminist movement moved up in the ranks, um, you know, you start to see the man outside the home being incarcerated or not taking care of his responsibility, or things of that nature, and you see more men getting more with their feminine side. So not only are they not taking care of their responsibilities and attracting women that they would normally have and having children with them, they don't have a great understanding of what is building a nation. And part of building a nation is having not only having a man, woman, and a child, but protecting that family, nurturing that family with the right information. So from the brother side, it's the system. I would say it's the system, but even more so is miseducation from not only just the community, but the churches and things of that nature. From the women's side, like I said, I would say that the feminist movement over the last 30 to 40 years definitely plays a role on these sisters. Now, I can't speak for you, Nefer Najai, but in my estimation, in dealing with men, and I live in the New York City area. That's possibly the most liberal part of the country outside of San Francisco. And you have all these career women who are busy and doing everything, but then you see their selection in men, and their selection in men, what they want is not actually what they desire. So, they have it on this business mentality and they really don't know what they want and not really getting in touch with the laws of attraction, which is, how men and women attract each other, being in masculine energy, protecting the home, and the women like nurturing but still holding it down. And I don't know if we have some former members. I have a cousin who's a member of the 5%ers, and the 5%, that's why they call the men gods, because they're providing knowledge and protecting, and the gods and the women earths because they're actually growing seeds from up the ground. But the biggest thing within the gender divide is that the black community, like everybody, is united except for the African community, and that's by design. So you go to these Democratic run cities like New York City or Boston or Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas, or even San Francisco, and you're going to see poverty. You're going to see like all these programs that are used to divide the black community. So to sum it up short, and I don't want to cut people off here, but my biggest reasons for the gender divide is miseducation of the sexes, miseducation of the culture, not having masculine men at home nurturing, because you could have a man, you could have a male figure at home, but you can still miseducate the masses and still bring up somebody that a woman is not going to take, in my opinion, seriously enough to produce and bear children. And I can go like you said, brother Kondrak. I have 300 minutes worth of reasons to tell you, but if I had to sum it up, that's the reason from the man side. And from the women's side, generations and generations of generations. You got to understand that the black woman, like in every other culture around the world, the man is always the head of the household, except for the black community, in which is usually the women who's head of the household. And not to say that women cannot take charge or anything like that, but our men are missing. So these women are passing down these feminist tradition to their daughters, and then they're passing it on, in their relationships, and they're getting, and usually women who come from a divorced relationship often get divorced themselves. So, and when they get divorced themselves, it comes back to the mother in the household. What ideas are you teaching them to look fabulous and say toodles and all that other stuff, or are you actually being a woman protecting the man in the household and making sure that the home base is good? You know what I mean? If you kind of get where I'm going at. So those would be my reasons. So lack of education of the sexes, bad traditions. You got to understand, feminism came from the Ku Klux Klan, the women of the Klan, actually. So it's rooted in the Ku Klux Klan history, and that provided the birth and the foundation of the feminist movement. So that is something that's very important. But the biggest reasons is miseducation in the sections, lack of masculine energy in the home, and that's any masculine energy. I don't mean male presence, because you can be feminine and be a male and put a woman in her feminine, and then the woman unfortunately has to carry that weight on her back. So those would be my reasons.
All right, brother. I knew you would take charge of that. I'm just gonna add a little bit. I'm gonna add something that you missed. one of the biggest contributors to the divide between the black man and black woman has been mass media, and
Oh yeah.
I can point to two things: the color purple
Oh yeah.
and hip hop. Now, because I'm a little bit older than the other two people on the panel, I remember in early hip hop, what brothers used to say, the MCs used to say, "Hey ladies," and the ladies would respond, and they used to say, "Hey fellas," and the fellas would respond. And then maybe, and that was, wow, I might not even been in high school when that was going on. Probably, yeah, actually I wasn't. But then eventually we became N words and B's and H's. And
Mhm.
when black men continuously were shown calling black women B's, and then you start seeing the colorism in the videos and all the things that followed that, which happened after the color purple, where, and I believe I talked about this last week, where they took all the attributes of the European male and projected them onto the black man. That dual assault, and then what the brother said about feminism, I talked about that previously. All those things combined to make a toxic cauldron, if you will. Then you can add Waiting to Exhale later on, some of the other movies. A toxic psychological cauldron that has affected the minds of our people. And then you have the negative statistics that are repeated over and over. And also, I do not want to leave this part out because we never want to talk about this. I did a show on it. Nobody wanted to show up. Nobody wanted to listen to it. We cannot overlook the impact of sexual abuse in the black community and the fact that we have, I would estimate, and having worked with Brother Irritated Genie, because this is something that he has researched for at least 25 years, maybe more. I would estimate that conservatively, 2 out of 3 sisters have been violated in their youth. And that's when I say conservative, I'm saying I know it's more than that. I'm being conservative just so it just doesn't sound ridiculous and make us all not want to be on here and just go cover our head. And sister said that call and answer wasn't that long ago. Thank you for not making me feel old, sister. It seems like 100 years ago now, but yeah, that sexual abuse aspect, that's a big aspect of that we don't want to talk about. And there are a lot of sisters that carry that hurt and pain with them. We see it manifest in different ways, and if you're not trained, you can't identify it. And it's become so rampant in our community that young female culture manifests in the same way that that sexual abuse manifests. And it's hard to tell the difference. And I'm somebody that has studied this. Yeah, we're gonna ask the sister. We can ask the sister right now. My wonderful producer said the men need to stop talking and let the sister ask the question. All right, sister. So, what is your opinion on what is contributing to the gender divide?
To continue with what you were just talking about and sexual abuse, it goes both ways. It's not just women that are being sexually abused and we're holding the weight and thus repeating the trauma. It's also the men that have been sexually abused and them repeating that trauma. I forget exactly how the question was worded, but another thing to add on to why there's a divide is that we have been wounded, just Ma'afa has wounded us, and we have never had the discussion amongst ourselves because we don't have home place and are not able to create home place. So it's not just that the women are not making home place, it's daggone near impossible to do so. And then when you are able to create a home place and you have a family unit, there's numerous distractions that keep those conversations from being had or keep those conversations from getting to the point of a resolution. So whereas I can come to the family cookout and be like, we need to talk about da 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 da. It's either gonna be don't nobody want to talk about that, don't nobody want to hear about that, or a diversion that'll go to either the typical entertainment. So if you have people that their mind is only on Real Housewives of Babylon, or on the men's side, you are 24/7, 365 football, basketball, whatever. So I think distraction has a lot to do with why we have not been able to rectify the wounds that occurred.
Absolutely. I concur with that as well. Do we have another question? And sister, could you mute me because I'm echoing, or could you get some headphones?
Say that again.
No, I was saying I can hear myself. I can hear echo. I was like, if you could, if you have some headphones, you could put them in, and I think that would take the echo out. And sister says, and men are sexually abused by older women, which translates to arrested emotional developments and maladjusted views of the opposite sex. Absolutely. And sister says there are lack of a SAFO and K2 hood training in the 9 areas of people activity in order to establish African-centered values and principles as we are concerned as an African-centered community. That goes without saying. One of, just if we just go speak from the African-centered perspective and talk about the African-centered community, one of the issues is there's so few truly African-centered people, and it's so spread out. It's very difficult to come together and build anything sustainable. And even if you've been properly taught and you're properly studying, putting things into practice where you get along with Black people becomes much more difficult in reality than it is in theory. Now, I've been part of maybe 4 organizations in my life. I've had a lot of experience with that. And you can all have the same ideology, have the same agenda, but literally it'll only take one thing to break Black people apart. And this is what I've always had the idea, the thought, well, not always, but recently. And I asked the elder, and he said it made sense. He wasn't sure. I believe that the lack of families over the last couple of generations, strong families where you had to deal with people no matter what, like you were all going to be in the same house, you were all going to share that food, you were going to get those hand-me-downs from your older brother. Like that's just what it was, and you had to deal with it. That lack of training that has hindered us in being able to come together and organize. And so it just goes to show how important the family structure is to doing any type of nation building. You have to be, you have to practice nation building as a child to grow up in a family to even be able to implement it on a level when you become an adult. But I think my last guest has just shown up. Let me see if I can get her on. Do we have any other questions do we have any other questions in the chat that somebody wants to place? Going once, going twice. Come on, Sister Mello, you always got good ideas. Or our wonderful producer. Do we have any brothers in the building? Let's see. Brothers, and I'm going to say something too about brothers real quick. I'm going to say this because y'all know I've been doing the singles mix. I've been doing all this stuff. Brothers will say, man, now literally, I started the singles mixers in DC for the brothers, right? Brothers said, brother, where are the women at? Where are the sisters at? Where the pro-black sisters at? Where the sisters with natural hair? Where the sisters that don't wear makeup? You know, all those things, right? Because those are the circles that I'm running. I say, okay. So I have the singles mixes, right? When I have the singles mixes, the brothers don't show up. The brother know what I'm talking about. That's why he's smiling up there. The brothers don't show up. And then I tell them the type of sisters that were there, and they like, oh, I'm gonna come to the next one. And then they have an excuse. And then we have something like this. I say, all right, some brothers gonna come out. We're gonna have a discussion. Because brothers ask me all the time to ask sisters this or why sisters do this, this, and that. Now here we are, 8:30, Saturday night. Only a handful of brothers here. So when I stop doing these things, I don't want to hear the brothers complain. I don't want to hear nothing about where the sisters at. I don't want to hear nothing about why all the sisters support LGBT. Because when I needed y'all to come here and represent, what happens? See?
Another thing to add to the divide, historically not showing up.
Y'all hear that, brothers? The sister said historically. She just said y'all historically not showing up. I'm saying she talking about y'all. She not talking about me because you know I'm DC Radical 1 and I'm doing my thing. You know what I'm saying? But for y'all brothers.
well, just to add on to what she says historically we're not showing up. Well, yeah, well, there's some truth to that, you know. So I can't say that she's not lying. However, the type of, you know, is also the type of person that you're dealing with. So, you know, if you're putting something out there and then nobody's showing up, you know, you got to be you know, with any type of community when you're trying to nation build, you also got to be very aware of the people that you're trying to attract to the event. So, you know, I understand that things happen, you know what I mean? But, you know, you also got to watch out for who you're attracting, you know, who are you marketing this thing to, you know, in history, you know, you're going to get people that you expect is going to be there, and you're going to get people who you don't expect that's not going to be there. So, you know, it's just interesting, you know, people, you know, brothers, you can say that, you know, brothers are not showing up, but it's also the people that you're attracting to the event. So that's just something.
True. Yeah, but you know, it's just one of those things. And I've heard over time, as many complaints as I heard lately of brothers complaining about sisters. There's just a lot of, you know, like I say, when it's time to show up and voice those complaints to the sisters when they're there, you know, suddenly they're not there. So let's see. See, brothers talking about rites of passage. Yeah, definitely need rites of passage. Rites of passage. Groups and organizations. There's a brother down in Florida. That's on Instagram. Attorney Awesome. He does some tremendous work with the young brothers. He's doing outstanding work. I think we need someone working with the young sisters to try to balance that out. I'm not saying it's not happening. I'm saying I haven't seen it. So just because I don't want sisters to be like, well, what are you saying that nobody? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I have seen some brothers doing some work, and I have not seen sisters doing, at least publicly. Like I said, I haven't seen it doing the same type of work to that level. Doesn't mean it's not happening. Just saying I haven't seen it. So let me see if I can bring. Oh, you got something to say, sister?
I was gonna say I do know of at least 2 women that are training other women on firearms. If we're talking about Attorney Awesome, I can say I have seen publicly at least 2 women doing so in Maryland, and I want to say she's in Virginia, but she comes up to Maryland and does classes in Maryland and DC. Well, no, not DC, but Maryland.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't talking about just his firearm training. I was just saying his work with the youth and trying to take those young men there and then grow them to be strong, masculine men in the future. Basically, he has like a rites of passage from maybe 10 to 18. So that's what I was saying. I wasn't speaking about just specifically the firearms aspect of it. Okay. Let's see what's going on in the chat. The sister said that I didn't say anything to disagree with you, sister. I'm being accused of something here in the chat that didn't happen. All right, let me see if I can bring on my last guest real quick. Let's see. Sister, are you there?
Hi.
Greetings. Introduce yourself,
Hi, good
please.
evening, everyone. I'm Camille. I tried to put up an avatar, but it's just not working out with me. I'm fashionably late. I don't like being late, but my alarm didn't go off for the event. So, hi, I'm Camille. I live in Dallas. I was invited to the radio show tonight, so I just wanted to introduce myself. And I'm just catching up with what you guys are saying in regards to, nation building and just Black youth and men and women overall on dating. So I think I got a gist of everything for a little bit, but hi.
All right, sister. We glad to have you on. Sorry about the avatar
Thank you
thing.
for having me.
Oh, no problem. The question was asked earlier. What do we think um, is contributing to the gender divide? And so, if you would like to elaborate on that, you can, because I am about to have a technical issue. So you can take as much time as you need until I come back.
Okay. Gender divide. Who? That's a topic that I've seen brought up on both sides, male and female. Um, and I think it's definitely something that's been instilled in us. And I think it kind of went sideways in the recent times, mainly because of what's happening out there in the world, down low brothers, women thinking, they don't need a man for anything. And it's just become kind of weird in a sense. And a friend of mine who is a male, he said society is putting too many labels on stuff. And I kind of agreed with him to a certain extent. He wants to live a poly lifestyle. I said, do you have poly money to live a poly lifestyle? And, he's like, I want to do this, but there's not too many women out there willing to do it. And I said, you can go ahead and do what you want to do, just make sure you're upfront with these women on the lifestyle you're trying to live. So he says that the lifestyle he wants to live, society won't allow him to do it. And that's the male perspective on just him saying that society is putting labels on everything because he generally thinks that women want a title all the time. And I told him, I was like, I do and would like a title. Nobody wants to be led on, but it's a communication thing that I think we're lacking as, male and female, women and man right now. And on the women's side, I've seen it from like the feminism standpoint that, little girls growing up were, made to be too grown or something. So I think that's where we kind of lost it. And I believe we can get it back, but I don't know. It's going to take some time. It's
Well,
definitely going to take some time.
I wanted to interject on you, Sister Camille. First of all, how are you?
Hi, I'm
Um,
great. How are you?
yeah. But so, do you think it can go? It's. I believe it can come back. You know what I mean? But it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of unindoctrinating our young ladies when it comes to carrying yourself. You know what I mean? And that goes for our young men as well, because it's all the mass, as brother Conrad was talking about, the indoctrination from the mass media coming down into our community, and then we have young brothers looking like women and young women acting like men. And when they actually come across a real man or a real woman, of course from of African descent, it's gonna feel weird to them. You know, it's gonna make them feel uncomfortable because everything that they've been embedded and indoctrinated with is gonna kick back, and you're gonna be like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And then though they don't realize until they get older, and especially our young ladies, where the body starts to break down and everything like that, that they can't do certain things like they used to. You know what I mean? It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And when it gets worse and worse and worse, they can't do this. Like, you got to understand, like, the laws of attraction and how it all works. And I don't want to say certain things. Well, I'll be frank with you. As men get older, men appreciate lady. Not to say that ladies don't appreciate when they get older. They definitely do mentally. But as their body breaks down, they can't do certain things, and that's what it's designed to do. So you can let astray, and you can intermarry and do anything like intermarriage. And we're definitely not for intermarriage here. So they can get led astray and be told all these lies. Same thing for the brothers. Either you got to be gay, or you face constant harassment on social media, like I do. From the different sexes. Especially based off if you post something too radical in their eyes or too anti-LGBTQ, um, it's just they just attack you with your beliefs. So you have to understand that the more and we have to unindoctrinate them, but it's the way that we carry ourselves and the way we do it. We can hold up sides to say that we're straight and black and proud, and those are all good things. But there's certain, and as a teacher, I use different strategies, to attack the weakness of the enemy, and that's going to be especially important with our young ladies. Our young ladies are being used against us, and I see it every day in the professional world, and I see it in the social world, in which you're going to have to know the laws and use the laws to your advantage to get ahead. So to say what you to add on top of that, Sister Camille, that's going to be a very important part in terms of unindoctrinating the devil's information embedded into their brains. Because remember, the devil comes in all shapes and sorts of sizes. You can't see the horns until it's too late. So, um that's just the truth.
Brother, Sister Camille touched on something. We might as well get into it since she touched on it. She touched on this polygamy thing. And so we might as well just lean in on it and go ahead. I see Sister Najee is like, oh, here we go.
It's time.
But I mean,
do you have polygamy money? That was right on point.
That's the whole point of nation building. Anytime I hear the word nation build, I automatically equate polygamy lifestyle. I'm all for polygamy when it's time to nation build. Right now, no. But when it's time to nation build, of course. But no, polygamy it requires polygamy money.
let me just say this, because this has come up at our events, and I'm gonna be completely honest. I looked at the brother that mentioned it, and I'm thinking to myself, you need to start with one woman. And that's not to denigrate the brother, but I'm just saying, I know how our women think. I know what our women like to a certain degree. And I know that brother's going to have to work on getting one woman first. And like you said, from the economic standpoint, first of all, number one, you're in a country where, in essence, is against the law almost everywhere in the country, except maybe Utah. And I'm not even sure about that. That's number one. Number two, you're talking about a group of people who don't get along anyway, meaning black people. We don't get along amongst ourselves. And then you're talking about doing something that's very complex. And then number three, we don't deal with this from an African perspective. So usually when a brother's talking about, oh man, I want to have more, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to mention the person's name because I don't like to throw people out there, but there is someone that we're all familiar with who came out on the scene. He had 4 black wives and had 1 black child. And as soon as I saw that, I said, "Oh no, this dude's not serious." I said, "This is for show. This is a good image." Because again, if you were truly polygamous and that's what you were about, and you were of means to do that, then you're going to have if you have multiple wives, first of all, 4 wives for any man in this society, good luck. You're gonna have to take a lot of maca root and do a lot of push-ups and other activities to strengthen your back. That's all I'm gonna say on that. And your economics best be on point. If you're not, because we have to think about, there are NBA players, people who have made millions of dollars, who cannot manage 2 women without jealousy, envy, without complaining to the courts that they're taking too much money, all of these things. And then you have $50,000 a year brothers who think they're going to manage 4 women when $1 million brothers can't manage 2 women. Again, we have to be realistic. Start with one sister. Can you satisfy one black woman for more than 24 months? That's my challenge. Start with that. If you can do that, then you can begin the discussion there. And then, can you still maintain that relationship once that sister has children? Because their body changes and their mind changes. And so you're really dealing with a different woman in many cases.
Yeah, I want to harp on that.
Hold on, brother, because I'm gonna let the sister come in, and then you can come back in. So that's what I want to say about the whole polygamy thing. I see brothers talk about that a lot, and I don't try to lean in on the brothers, but sometimes I just start shaking my head and laughing and thinking to myself, this is not realistic, fam. But sister, you've been laughing to yourself, making all types of faces. What are your thoughts on this?
Polygamy money and polygamy character. Are you a leader, a true leader? Are you going to be able to lead multiple women? Can you lead one woman? Like you said, can you start off with that? But to be able to, it's not realistic. The people that say it are not actually, like you said, thinking from an African-centered perspective. You're not actually thinking about nation building. You're not actually thinking about buying a farm and where your children all going to live. You're not thinking about that. You're just following the trends for your own personal satisfaction and ego. That's where that mostly comes from.
I agree. Go ahead, brother.
Well, I was going to hit on 2 things. First of all, Sister Najah, you're absolutely right. Women look at men in terms of attractiveness level on the ability to provide. It could be your looks. It could be, how much I can spit all this African facts to you. If I can't provide, if I can't set up to provide, and I'm not even talking about a polygamous nature. I'm just talking about simple me, trying to attract you, then we have nothing. You have to understand, and this is where it gets lost, is that I want to use this term, sexiest thing a man can do is to be focused on with the Most High. So he's focusing on his destiny, and the ancestors are guiding his path. When you start to focus on the woman and the woman alone, you know what I mean? It's kind of a turnoff because you're working towards her, and that's what this society has denigrated itself to. We're trying, like, we listen to all. I'm a big 80s and 90s R&B person, and I love Luther Vandross and like Johnny Gill and everybody, Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston, all those things. But in between those melodies, you can see the indoctrination there. And I used to just like the song when I was little, but when I grew up, I started listening to the lyrics. I'm just like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? Like, I can listen to this while I'm making love to a woman, but I can't like literally do what I could do. You know what I mean? So when you start to create a certain type of man, and this is where you see, good brothers, good intention brothers onto the sideline, and women are marrying more of the non-focused brothers, if you can get my sense. The second thing is, from an African perspective, as I got older, looking at the dating pool at my age, I went from, hey, just looking at who, what she had on to everything else, to, getting inside her brain. And you have to understand that you are what you attract. So when I date somebody and I start to talk to them and interact with them, certain buzzwords is going to go off. So if they telling me right off the bat, Black Lives Matter, You know what I mean? That's a red flag in my opinion. Now, whether they know what the true meaning of Black Lives Matter is, which is a feminist LGBT organization, you know, is beyond them, but I just kind of take back and I just kind of decipher that. And I'm just like, well, Black Lives Matter is, all these other things and the way they react to it. You know what I mean? So all these things I ask, it's kind of like going on an interview at Google. I start to ask, I don't drill it right then and there. I have a way of going about it, but I start to ask about previous dating history, what are you attracted to? What are your beliefs? How do you go about certain things? These are all things that are going on in my head because if I'm going to nation build with you or at least invest some time with you to build a nation, I have to know what am I getting myself into. And this is where brothers are so hypersexual nowadays, especially the ones who are always, and I see you shaking your head, you know what I mean, are very hypersexual, not knowing what they're dipping their thing into, and then they're getting a bunch of unevenly yoked children. And when you get a bunch of unevenly yoked children, you know what I mean, they do what, they kind of like do whatever they want to do. So something I learned from my parents, in which they're divorced as well, I kind of like looked at that and I'm just like, that's not a place where I want to be. I can't get used to divorce, because that's just not who I am, so I kind of like I had to just write notes down what to do or what not to do and just learn from my own experiences. So I go into each and every question. I'm just like, all right, this sister's not into nation building. If I show her Khalid do, I remember, I'll give you one good example, and I'm gonna keep this short, brother Conrad. I had a feminist. I was dating a feminist a couple of years ago, and I showed her how I found the irritated genie and how I found straight black pride. It was about women dressing appropriately, and he was talking about he was with PKV at the time, and he said like all these like he showed Paris Hilton. He had to be sexy just to sell a got dog hamburger. You know what I mean, and all this other stuff. And he at the end of the video he said, "Women, sisters, put on some clothes," and she was very uncomfortable looking at that when he just told the truth. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table with this young lady, and she just looked at me and just flipped her hair, and I just eventually stopped it, despite the fact that I got along with her and stuff like that. But these are the questions we need to ask ourselves before we start planting seeds and letting our hormones get the best of us, and then we get some children and get up in situations that I understand we make mistakes. Not all of us was conscious at one point, but we had to come, everybody leads the path, so that's my little take with that. But we have to make sure we have to ask these questions before we sow our seed into unfertile soil. And that's the same thing for us women. Don't let your soil get corrupted by foul, like genetically modified, I'll just say GMOs type of dudes infiltrating you and then producing bad fruit. Good fruit and good seeds and good soil produces great fruit.
Indeed, brother. Yeah. Anyway, you started talking, just made me have some flashbacks about some things I'm not going to discuss right here. But we have a question from a sister, and she says, "What do you think?" She's talking to the panelists, is keeping African-centered men and women from connecting. So who wants to be the first one? Since hold on, bro. Hold on. Since we
I'm gonna stay back from this one. I mean, I'm gonna answer it, but I'm gonna let the sisters answer first.
Yeah, I'm gonna let the sister answer first. I'm gonna start with. I'll start with Sister Najee.
I don't know if everybody was at the Liberated Minds Expo a couple of weeks ago, but Dr. Malimu Baruti had an excellent presentation where he listed the differences between talking about education, the differences between an African-centered school and an African-themed school. And I think that a lot of us have an issue, for one, and it is to no fault of our own, that we don't have a base of African centeredness. We are in Babylon, so I understand that, and I don't blame anyone for not having that upbringing. But when people get to a level of consciousness where they understand African centeredness and the luxury that it is and the resource that it is and the privilege that it is, I think their egos tend to trip up a lot of people. So whereas we can all be sitting here, or I could be on a date with somebody that's African centered, they're actually African themed. They're not really planning to get to the promised land. They're not really thinking about it outside of the fact that they have knowledge that the typical African American does not have. So I think that
I got
that would be a major, because there's no reason that at this point in 2020 we have all these people here watching. There's no reason that all the African centered people shouldn't have something together. We have little bits and pieces of things, but there's no reason that we have institutions that are quote unquote African centered, but we have no programs for the community. We haven't at all repeated what was achieved with the Black Panther Party. Why would that be? It's because there's still, we are not getting past the ego of what it is. Like, okay, it's a good thing that you're African centered, but what are you doing with that? How are you using that to serve the community? No, people aren't reaching their true potential and their destiny with it. And it's very unfortunate because there's way too many quote unquote conscious people at this point.
Okay, that is that's an interesting one. Sister Camille, can you answer that question of why African centered or even conscious people aren't actually coming together? Well, men and women aren't actually coming together.
Why conscious men and women aren't coming together? I think because the level of consciousness, everybody has their own definition of it. And as Mr. Jones was saying earlier about the laws of attraction and talking about being sexy and ancestors, I have met a few conscious brothers in society out there that say they're all for the conscious lifestyle, but they don't get it. They don't get it because, one, they're thinking of it as lust and not realizing that consciousness is a state of enlightenment. There's no end all be all, period. If you're going to say you're conscious and you want to attract a conscious person, this was a discussion that literally I have with my friends, male friends, female friends, that it's like, oh my God, if you want to attract something, you really have to become what you want to attract. Not saying, because I literally had somebody in a conscious community come at me a few weeks ago and they were like, so you mean to tell me that because my mother was treated bad and she was beat as a wife, that she attracted that? And I was like, no, 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 no. Please. So let's not get it twisted that when I say you want to attract something, anybody in society, when it comes to no matter where they want to get to in life, I tell people all the time, where I am right now, I manifested everything, and every which way I want to go in the next life, in the future, that's what I'm going to manifest. So when it comes to us as a whole, men and women, Black male and females, that when it comes to consciousness, we have to make sure that we know what consciousness means. Everybody has their own definitions, and I've seen this in our communities, especially online. Everybody has their own definition of what woke is. And that's where we're falling short. Like we're the society that's the most divided, sadly, and it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Why? Because it's so easy to be us because we celebrate us every day. No matter what you're doing, you wake up in the morning, you waking up black. You cooking something, you probably cooking something that 9 out of 10 of us are probably cooking at one point in the week or in the month. So at the end of the day, it's a divide when it comes to the conscious community that must be stopped. You can't jump down somebody's throat because they're eating meat and you are vegan and you conscious. You can't. So I've seen two sides of the spectrum, and it's a judgmental type thing. That's why I believe like we're divided. It's just a state of judgment. Everybody's judging for no apparent reason, if that makes sense. So Mr. Jones said something when he touched on, speaking about the Most High and speaking about the ancestors, but he also touched on something about when he was out with the young lady and the host was there, and they said, I think he said just now that they said, if you dress like a lady, what is your definition of that's another state of judgment, like dressing like a lady. Are we not allowed to be sexy? Are we not allowed to be, cute, feeling beautiful? And it's not just for a man, for ourselves. Like I get that a lot. Like, what are you doing going out? What are you so dressed up for? During this whole quarantine, I get dressed up every single day to work in my living room. And everybody's like, what are you doing? At the end of the day, it's for you. So, and when it comes to consciousness and when it comes to nation building, you're doing it for you, but you're also doing it for a higher power, if that makes any sense.
I'm gonna speak. Oh, and actually, Sister Mello stole half of what I was about to say. There is a difference between. Actually, I made a post, and I'm gonna actually make a shirt, and what it said is, "Woke is less than conscious, which is less than African." And Sister Mello said, "Wokeness is new, encompasses intersectionality and all kinds of isms." Yeah, basically now in today's era, if a sister's saying she woke, she's saying she's pro LGBT. That's all she's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all woke is in 2020. Consciousness is a whole different thing, and I've been in and out of this thing so long that I was in it before consciousness was a thing. What was different at that time was that when you had knowledge, and that's what it was called, having knowledge, you belonged to something. So you just weren't randomly out here like now, where we don't have organizations and things like that. When you had knowledge, you were either, and I'm just going to use examples of what was around at the time. You were a 5%er, you were Muslim, you were Nation of Islam, you were UNIA, you were December 12th movement. I mean, there were a whole litany of organizations. Or if you were African centered, you were connected to some type of institution or organization. Now, because of the internet, no one has to answer to anyone. So back in my time, if you were a 5%er, they were going to ask you, what's today's math, God? You didn't know today's math? It was going to be a problem. It was a physical confrontation. That's how serious it was. And not to say that that was good or bad. I'm just saying it was a different aspect. It was a different mentality where because you belong to something, then there were two things. One, it helped keep you in check. And then two, if you were lucky, depending on the organization, then those were that's where you look for your mate. Now, the problem came in the fact that at that time, the number of brothers who were into certain things was higher than the number of sisters. So when I look at this time and I see brothers and I see the number of sisters who are African centered and see sisters rocking their natural hair and sisters changing their names and doing all this type of stuff, I feel encouraged for the brothers because I'm like, it wasn't like that when I was coming up, at least not in DC. And now I see a lot of sisters who are into this thing, and it's almost like it's not that the sisters outnumber the brothers, but it's like the sisters are more a lot of times the sisters seem to be more serious than the brothers, if I can say that. Now this is my experience from almost 3 decades of this. So, but to get back to the original question that the sister asked of what is keeping brothers and sisters apart as far as that in the African Center community, I think part of it, weirdly enough, is I think there's a mismatch in ages. I see a lot of younger sisters and older brothers who come to events. I have an event, and sometimes we have a lot of sisters from 27 to 37 and brothers from like 35 to 44. And, it's just like, well, this is what we got. This is what we work with. And I don't know what sisters, what they think about, because everybody has their own age parameters and things like that. But I just noticed we have certain events, even the singles mixers, and we'll have these type of weird age combinations. And it just, you look at it and you're just like, this is weird. Where are the sisters of these brothers' age, and where are the younger brothers of these sisters' ages? Why can't we get them to come to events? So it's a lot of things. There's a lot of complex stuff with that. And I still don't think I've answered that sister's question to my own satisfaction. But brother, I'm gonna let you speak on this question.
Well, I'm gonna have to say something about it, and I'm glad I went last. One thing that Sister Camille talked about was she was dating a lot of brothers who were saying they're conscious and that they were not. One thing that you have to understand, and Sister Mello will be one of the very first people to tell you about this, is that a lot of brothers speak conscious as a form of game. They're not really about that life. You have to understand.
Talk about it, brothers. Talk about it.
They're really not about that life at all. They're just using it, and I'm gonna just say it as straight as I can say it. They're trying to get inside, they're trying to dip inside your loins. That's all it is. And I've seen it happen in New Jersey, where I'm from, and especially at 2 specific HBCUs, one that I used to work at. The first one I'm gonna name is right there in DC, Howard University. You see a lot of these brothers out here. They call them hoteps. And I don't like to use that word because we use that word, but that's just them. And then they do the exact opposite of African-centered behavior, and then the college I used to work at as an adjunct professor is Morehouse College right there in Atlanta. And these brothers I used to teach, I don't know if anybody saw a show in the late 80s and early 90s called Designing Women. And Meshach Taylor was on the show, and I taught his son, Tariq Taylor. And Tariq Taylor was the absolute perfect, and I love the brother. He's a very intelligent, but he fit the mold of that, we conscious, you're conscious, let's hook up type of thing. You're like, and I date a lot of these, and Sister Mello absolutely said it and hit it on the head when she was talking about, intersectionality and all that. When a woman tells me she's woke, I kind of like it's a big red flag in my eyes because you are pro LGBT in my eyes. But I'll dig a little deeper on what you really mean by quote unquote woke. I already know. So if I start seeing the rainbow flag and equality, using all these buzzwords that actually hurt African people, that tells me 2 things: either you're dumb, or you're just, and you're just contributing to that lifestyle. So when you talk about African theme versus African centered, there's the big correlation behind it is does that person or does that entity know what being African centered really is? And is it yay or nay? Because I know, and lucky for me, I had 2 teachers in the 5th and the 6th grade who were both African-centered teachers. One, my 6th grade teacher, Miles Dean, we used to see, like, they used to teach Christopher Columbus and all this other stuff. We watched Dr. Ben. All right, we watched Dr. Joseph Ben Yakinen in social studies class. We learned about Mumia Abu-Jamal. We learned about all these African people. We learned about each and every, I was very African centered from the age of 11. And then the year prior to that, I don't know if anybody knows this. I don't know if anybody heard an artist by the name of Gwen Guthrie. She came out with a song in 1986 called "Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent." But I knew her as Mrs. Wakefield, and that's how I met Whitney Houston and Lauryn Hill and everybody in the fifth grade, and I almost had a contract with Warner Brothers, but my mother didn't want me in the music industry, and I'm glad that she didn't do that. But going back to what we was talking about, and just to sum it all short, a lot of people, a lot of brothers out there are speaking that you don't even know who you are, you an African princess and all that other stuff. They'll use that and they'll say that as a form of game. And sisters who are naive enough to believe it, and you have to understand, a lot of sisters between the ages of 16 and 35 are malleable. All right. They can be pushed in any direction if you push the right button. And when you push that button, they're going to believe anybody who's pushing the right buttons, and they don't even know that they're being led astray. So you can teach and say anything that you want, and like, hey, yo, you're on the wrong track, and they don't care anything about it until it's too late. And a lot of these brothers, they really, and then when it's time to put up a shut up, you know, these brothers are not like Sister Najai said, or lost and not found. They are gone. They're nowhere to be found. They don't want to be found because that wasn't really their game. Their game was to hit the punani and hit it as much time as they want. But they had no destiny. But they did a good job covering that up, and they did a good job covering that up and pushing off a facade for that. So to answer that question of African centered versus African themed, it goes off to an interrogation onto, do you know what being African really is? And that's where you'll find your answer.
And with that, let me just add on real quick. It's good for one of the things, because actually I was having this conversation with a sister, and I had actually invited her to an event and she didn't show up, and then I found out the reasons why. If a sister really wants to know if a brother is serious, bring her around some brothers that are serious. They'll be able to figure it out really quickly. I mean, it won't be 10 minutes. They'll be able to tell you. One of the things that we've lost with the breakdown of the family is sisters don't have older brothers, cousins, things like that look out for them. And if they do, they won't listen to them when it comes to mate selection. I got people in my family. It's going to be short. I looked at some of the people, the choices they had, and they literally picked the worst person. And I'm thinking to myself, why don't you just listen to me? Needless to say, they made their life harder. I see it all the time. And it's just something, and with brothers too, because I had a situation years ago. This brother that I was tight with, he met this young lady. He brought her around. The sisters in the group basically told him, hey, you need to leave her alone. And all I'll say is he made his life much harder. So an easier way as far as vetting people, to what the brother was saying, see if somebody's serious, bring them around. That's the good part of having a community or a group of people that you build with. You bring them around and it'll be exposed extremely quickly. A BB for Hodier to a BB for Hodier, man. My brother, long time no see or hear from. Sister Camille, did you have anything else to add on to this part of the discussion?
No, I actually do not. I believed Sister Najai, make sure I'm saying it properly.
Najee.
Najee,
It's
okay.
Najee.
She pretty much summed up in the beginning part of what I agreed on, and Mr. Jones, there's some of which we're gonna have to agree to disagree with some, but you definitely brought up a key point when you said basically touching on certain things as regards to certain buttons and what you should be recognizing when you see these quote unquote hoteps. I hate using that word. It bothers me also, because that's a whole word that shouldn't even be used in a context that people have been using it. But the last thing I just wanted to touch on was when Brother Jones said that, he basically woke something up in me, that when he said that whole, there's certain buttons that you should be touching on when it comes to, African spirituality and, Afro-centeredness. And in order for anyone the ages 16 to 35, as he was saying, to get that, one, they make sure they have to make sure they have some kind of spirit of discernment, because if you don't, you're gonna be led astray. You're gonna be led astray. And I could have been a key example of that, but because I have a spirit of discernment and I know how to peep game, as they say it, I could have been led astray many a times, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna beat my feet on this one because I know what this person's after. So that's another thing. As long as you're centered and you have that spirit of discernment and you know what you're building towards in regards to your lifestyle, you could peep game on these fake woke brothers out here as a woman, and that's what I try to drop knowledge when it comes to women out there dating, and they're looking for a conscious person, or they're looking for somebody to, be on the same wavelength as them. It's definitely one of those things that you make sure you not faking the funk out here. Do what you want to live, the lifestyle that you want to live, but make sure that it's not leading you astray, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do we have any more questions in the chat? Because I think we took a good little while on that. I don't see that I miss any questions. I do not see. Now, Sister Mello always has questions. I'm not gonna put her on a spot. And our brother, BB48 man, just came in. Brother, I'm sure you got a question for the sisters. So fire away when needed. There was a discussion. Let's see. There was some talk about older age differences in relationships. All right, let's talk about that. What do you all think about age differences? I'll say 10 plus years, both ways, men to women, women to men. Sister, since you're the youngest, Sister Najee, I'm gonna ask you.
It's slim pickings out here, so I definitely can see why 10 plus years is the only option for some people. I don't like to feel pressured into that. I would much rather have someone that is in my age group, because we're going to have a different level of understanding and appreciation for certain things. And I'm coming from a completely different world, because it's a different world than somebody that is 35, if you know what I mean. So and then I think that different age groups have different missions as well. So I would prefer to have someone that's in my age group. That would be my preference. And if I got to be 40 and there was nothing going on, then I guess I would have to settle. But that would be my preference.
Okay. And I gotta ask a question. You said it's slim pickings out here. Can you you knew I was going there. Can you elaborate on that?
Slim pickings as to what you were talking about earlier. If you would set up a mixer and only women would show up. There's slim pickings in the conscious world, in the African world. If you're living in Babylon and you're an African, it's slim pickings if you're trying to build a family. they're slim pickings when it comes to dating, and then halfway through the date, you're finding out that the person that you're talking to is laughing about the girl that got thrown into the trash can a couple weeks ago. Morality, ethics, is slim pickings. So that's what I mean.
All right, guys. Mr. Camille.
Okay. To answer quick, I was looking at the comments really quick before I get to that question. Sister Mello had asked, what does Camille disagree with? It was just earlier when Brother Jones was talking about certain buttons that these certain Hotep guys push, because people, women from the ages of 16 to 35 are easily swayed in that direction. So that was just one of the things. And the only thing that I disagree was on was the fact that you have to have a spirit of discernment to peep game and what these men are out here trying to convey when they're fake wokeness that they bring to the table. So that was just that. But in regards to the age differences, I'm noticing that a lot. And I'm noticing that with people in my age group that are dating people 10 years older. I'm noticing that with myself. I cap at 2 years younger than me. I try to, because I'm like, anybody younger than me is kind of immature. Like, it really takes heart to find a person younger than me that's mature enough to have mature conversations, and not just, oh, what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing conversations. No, like, I tell people all the time in my personal life, you know, you're going to have to move me. You can be as pretty as whatever or as handsome as whatever, but if your mind doesn't move me, I'm not moving anywhere. And it's so true. I've come across some really attractive men, and my friends are like, what happened? And I'm like, his mind wasn't there. Like, he had all the other things going on, and he just wanted to hang out and do what young people do. And I'm like, not saying that young people do the same thing, because I've met some mature young people, but when it comes to our age differences, definitely slim pickings also, because I've seen it. And period, in the Black community, isn't it said that the average, the ratio for men to women, because so many men are locked up or swing the other way, that it's pretty much slim pickings. So that's another situation. I've met men who are older than me. I've have friends who are older than me that, live a lifestyle, and they rather younger women, or vice versa. So it all depends. I have a colleague of mine, she doesn't date anybody her age. She's about to be 40. She's like, I like them young. So it's one of those things. It's all about preference at the end of the day.
Okay. Mr. Jones.
To me, there's a bunch of reasons why I think there's a big age difference in the community. Number one, I believe as men get older, if you have nothing, if you started off with nothing, and as you gain resources, you become more attractive. And when men look to mate with the other sex, they're looking, when you're like, as men, as Amen designed it, and as the world was designed, men are subconsciously always trying to produce. Okay, so what you're gonna see out here is you're gonna have a lot of older men, or you're gonna have a lot of younger women, young girls, like I would say between the ages of, and this is just me, 22 to 29, going after men between the ages of 38 and 51, because they have more resources when they get older. When you have more resources, when you're able to provide, the more attractive you are. So my preference, I'm with Sister Najee. I would rather have somebody in my own age range, but at the same time, you have to, you know, you have to have also what Sister Camille was saying, have a level of discernment as well. So somebody I've definitely dated older women. Though I was born in 1986, I'll be 34 in October, and I've dated a woman 10 years my senior. But in turn, and I'm not ashamed, but in my eyes, she was feminine, she was focused, and she had to go through a lot of life, a lot of life experiences to get to that point. And it wasn't somebody, logically and biologically that I could produce with, but in terms of what she was bringing to the table mentally and physically, I was a she I was able to date her because she was, in my eyes, uh mature enough and physically mature enough to handle what I was giving her. A lot of women my age and younger, especially younger, you know, don't have that mindset. They're all about, they've been accepted into this liberal ideology of you got to go to work, and if a dude gonna screw, he's gonna screw. And I don't mean to be that graphic, but that's just the way it goes. And they cannot handle my type of knowledge. So if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to say all these things, and if I start to bring up facts, saying, hey, this is what's going on with Black Lives Matter, this is what happened, here's the double check, and they're not going to believe it if they're wearing their little sunshades and folding their arms, then what are you to do? So my answer to that question is that you're going to see it more commonplace, that you're going to have, you know, men who are older between the ages of 38 and 51 going after women in their 20s, because naturally, women between that age are very fertile biologically, and they're at biologically they're at their prime. They can bear more children. So that would be my answer to that.
Okay, brother. And I had a thought, and I really just lost my train of thought because I was looking at a question, and I wanted to add on to what you're saying. Hopefully that thought will come back. But oh no, yeah, what I want to say real quick is there is a lot of discussion about there being a shortage of men, but there is a statistic that states that 51% of black men are not only unmarried but don't have children. And that's something we never talk about. So we always talk about these men and not taking care of their children, so forth, so on. A lot of times, what I find with sisters is sisters in general, not necessarily African centered sisters, but sisters have a tendency to only see the men and judge the men that they're attracted to, and the other men become invisible. And then that shapes their experience with men. So I just wanted to say that real quick because I think there are more brothers out here than sisters want to admit, but a lot of brothers, because of their experiences, take themselves out of the dating pool because they don't have positive interactions with sisters as far as dating. They may be able to get along with sisters at work and their family and stuff like that. But when it comes to the dating thing, I've talked to a lot of brothers in person or online that they just they don't feel like their sisters are feeling them for whatever reason. And that's in the general black community. And I have seen it somewhat in the African centered community as well, although not as much. The sister had a question. Says, do people divulge too much information when we are making ourselves available for a compliment? Interesting question. Does anybody want to be the first one to answer that question? Or do we need to think about it?
Is the question, are we giving away too much information while we're dating?
It says,
is that what she's trying to say?
Let me see if I can go down and see if okay. I do not. I'm gonna wait for the sister to get some clarity to that. But there was another question that I saw. Oh, there's a question for the sisters. Says, does the secret to long-lasting black relationships rest in choosing a mate who has committed to black liberation?
Yes.
You want to
Yep.
elaborate? Or just
Just
Yeah.
yes. Yes. That's the only option. Otherwise, you're wasting time. Or you're just not serious.
Sister Camille?
Yep. Mhm. Nothing else in between there.
Okay. The sisters agree. So, brother, your question was answered with a simple yes. I'll say, and I'll answer for the brothers. Okay, the brothers back. I have seen brothers over the years attempt to get a sister that they find other positive attributes in. And sister, can you mute your mic real quick? Get a sister that they find other positive attributes in, and then try to, for lack of a word, convert her. And I've seen that work, and I've seen that not work. Me personally, you have as a man, because the sister's going to look to you for leadership. You have to know yourself and know how much work that you want to put in to getting a sister a certain place, and also know the things that you can't deal with. For example, me, a sister that's a feminist, there's nothing for us to talk about at all. Sister,
Absolutely.
sister that's pro LGBT, there's nothing for us to talk about at all. For the most part, a sister that's into the church, pretty much we not too much discussion we're gonna have. But that's me. Other brothers may have other parameters. So, brother, you wanna add on to this question?
Repeat the question again, and then I'll answer it. Because I went to the bathroom and I just came back. Repeat that again.
Basically, and the brother had actually asked it to the sisters. He was asking, is a man being committed to black liberation a requirement? And then I was just answering the question for the brothers on what we look for and what we can do. Because I think it's a little different when you're a brother and you might be able to lead a sister in this direction as opposed to a sister trying to lead a brother. I think it's a little different dynamic.
Well, yeah, I get you. Well, I'm glad. But before Hody Man asked that question, because yeah, and I'm glad you said different brothers have different parameters. I definitely have different parameters. Like you said before, if you're pro LGBTQ, we don't have nothing to discuss about nation building because you don't know about nation building because you think you're sexually liberated. All right. There's nothing sexually liberating about child abuse. There's nothing sexually liberating about, walking around, coming down streets and helping the gentrification efforts of a bunch of weirdos that live up the hill. So, and I do mean that they're weirdos. And we just had that problem. Antifa tried to come in to Newark on Bergen Street and tear it up. Fortunately, Newark is one of the very few cities with a somewhat pro-black mayor, Amiri Baraka's son, Raz Baraka, and he deployed the police force to stop Black Lives Matter and to stop Antifa. So the community was saved, and I'm glad that happened. Now, I go back to your question, the big thing about that is yes, I do have different parameters and I have standards. And I'm very simple. You meet them or you don't. All right. So number one, if I could, if you're talking about, black liberation, nation building, if you're talking about how disgusting Black Lives Matter is, or, talking about things that really uplift the community, that's a plus for me. If you're really doing things that I perceive as feminine, and that just depends on who you are, you know what I mean? That I take a positive to. There's different other ways in terms of how I, the potential to come up and understand the importance of family. And family is being the very first building block of a great nation. If you don't have a great understanding of that, which is basically African-centered thinking as a whole, basically me and you can't vibe. And there's tons of people that I don't vibe with because you got a lot of men who validate the feminists. And when you have men that validate the feminists, it kind of destroys what we're trying to do because they're trying to, they're thinking single, narrow minded, just trying to get in the pants, and they're not thinking long term. And when you don't think long term, that's where you get your little situationships and everything else and your hiccups. So to answer that question, I have very strict standards, and I look at certain things when I mate with a certain black woman. And if you're not about family building and the importance of that, and you can't see that Black Lives Matter and other like-minded organizations is used to destroy the black family, then I can't mess with you no more. End of story.
Copy that. We got another question. Oh, okay. All right. The sister clarified the question. She says, do we talk too much? Do we tell people all that we want before we allow time for them to show us who they are? That's an interesting question. Anybody want to take charge of that answer?
Where's the question? Who asked the question again?
Spirit, mind, character, soul. She had asked a question earlier and she clarified it. And basically she said, do we talk too much? Do we tell people all that we want before we allow them to show us who they are? And I'm assuming she's saying in getting to know someone. And I'm just going to say, from how I'm looking at the question, one thing that can happen is that if you tell somebody what you want in detail, they can attempt to become that in order to get you, even though that's not who they are. So that if you've dated long enough, you've experienced that. I've experienced that. I've seen it. So yeah, you kind of have to let people. You really, when you're getting to know them, you have to get to know them. You can't put everything. I think sisters do this because sisters have that list, and they just roll the list out, and then they start checking off the list. Say, okay, yeah, he's this tall, he got this much money. The sister laughing over there. He's this and that. Oh, he's read all these books. Oh, he can do this many push-ups. You know what I'm saying? And before you know it, that brother's fulfilling that fantasy. And then she really get to know him. It's like, oh, this is not the person I thought he was. But that is how I see that question. Sister Naja, would you like to add on to that?
I don't fully understand the question, but I would say that if you're giving a lot of yourself in the beginning, it should be with purpose. So if I'm going to give, like when she said talking too much or giving too much information, my too much information would be the checklist, like you said, of are you interested in Amos Wilson? Like that would be my too much to try and figure out whether or not it's even worth pursuing. So I would say just redirect it so that it's a purposeful conversation.
All right. And Sister Camille, would you like to answer that question?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because my friend who's listening and also she's here, but I have her way in the back of me because of the feedback. Her answer, which I'm gonna tie into mine, she says she only dates. I told her put it in the chat. She says she only dates older men because they know what they want. And I said, I'm gonna get back to that one. I'm gonna hold that pin in that one. But I said, with this one, it's a prime example. I have a perfect example of this. Yes, I feel that you shouldn't give too much information in the beginning because, like you said, it does give leeway for them to act like the person that you want in the beginning and then switch up on you. And then you wonder, oh my God, he was so nice. What happened? Yeah, because he showed you what you wanted. So that's that. My example of this, I actually had this situation happen to me today. I'm dating. Somebody asked where my age is. I'm 34, about to be 35 next month. And, I'm dating. looking for that one. And somebody that I'm dating, we've only been out like once. And I told my best friend, and I'm going to be very, transparent. I told my best friend, I was like, hey, he wants to come over. He asked me if I wanted to come over, and I'm like, dude, we only seen each other one time. Like, hold up. We do have a list. Yes, we do. As the women, we have that list. We have a certain type of protocol. And I've been called out by older guys that says, hey, you shouldn't have that protocol. This is why Black women, like somebody told me this, and I'll tie that back into later. Someone told me this, this is why Black women can't find the love that they want because y'all got too many rules. And I was like, taken aback, but we're going to leave that right there for now. So the person been wanting to see me all week. And I told him, I said, these are my days I'm available. I run a business, plus I work a full-time job. These are the days that I'm available. Get with me around this time. Some reason he jumps up. He's living this sporadic lifestyle since COVID came down. He wants to see me today. Then he's like, if today doesn't happen, can tomorrow happen? I meal prep on Sundays. I told you what time I'm available. If you're not understanding that, clearly you got something else going on. So I didn't get mad. I was like, what time? He's like, all day. I'm like, what? What are you saying right now, boss? So he's like, yeah, all day, we can hang and sip wine. And I'm like, where? He's like, oh, your place or my place. I said, I'm not comfortable with that. I just met you. Our first date was in the park, at a picnic due to COVID. So it's one of those things. So my best friend jumps up. It's one of those things where you're just like, oh no. So my best friend, she says to me, she was like, you shouldn't tell him, you shouldn't suggest any more dates to him. You're basically showing him how to treat you. And I don't know, maybe the audience wants to chime in on this, but it's like one of those things, like we're caught between a rock and a hard place with this topic, because yes, you want to show a man how to treat you, but you also want them to lead. Women are looking for a leader. At the end of the day, we're looking for something. I always throw it out there when men say, hey, we should meet up. Hey, what do you have in mind? Because I don't want to be the person making plans and you're like just going with it, and you hate, wine tastings, and you rather go to the beer pub to do beer tastings. Like, I'm not going to do that. So it's a matter of discussion, getting to know the person, and making sure that you're, one, setting boundaries, and you're also not jumping the gun too soon. So just give a little by little. To answer the question, a little bit goes a long way. And as you and him and her, you guys get to know each other, then that can tie back into, the relationship that you're creating. So you both understand each other, because at the end of the day, we're spirits. Spirits attract spirits. So you attract what you want.
Okay. And I was looking and I saw an interesting question. And I believe the question was, and I can't find it right now, but I believe the question was, should we practice abstinence while we're looking for a compliment? And we really about to have some interesting answers on that. I'm going to let Mr. Jones start that off.
Yes. Okay. So should we practice abstinence? Yes or no? To go back to the other question, and I'm going to lead it into this question. I think gradually we should we should start off with a level of ourselves, and then as we get to know the person, we gradually let them know more information. That's just my opinion. And Sister Camille, it sounds like that brother is kind of pushing you a little bit. It sounds like he doesn't have a lot of options out there. So I'm just gonna say that because I would never do that. But that's just me. And I guess everybody has their own game, but it just doesn't sound good. But leading into that, should people practice abstinence? It really just depends on the person. I'm gonna be honest with you. should we practice abstinence? I'm just gonna say this: if you natural, if I'm with a sister, if I'm with a black woman, and I naturally, mentally up here, you got to understand that all this out here gets my foot in the door, but it's what's up here that leads to the sexual energy, the gravitation, and the eventually the intercourse, and so on and so forth. So it really just depends on mental attraction and how quickly we click on that mental attraction. So if you're somebody, and like I am strong and disciplined when it comes to this, so one thing with me is that when I'm discussing anything with a sister, whether it be about life or, the way the world is going, if I am mentally putting her in her feminine state, then if everything clicks, then, you know, it is what it is. I'm not going to regret it because she put me in my natural masculine and I put her in a natural feminine and it just happened. So, me personally, I do believe that we should use a level of discernment before we have sex. Practicing abstinence and making someone wait could be a good way of, determining whether or not, you know, we proceed forward. And I'm gonna give you a good example of that. There was a young lady that I've known since I was 5 years old. She's had a crush on me since she was 5 years old. She really was in love with me, but knew nothing about me. She knew me since I was five, and it's just like when you're a kid and you love something, it becomes part of your childhood. So she saw me as an adult. She saw me doing good things out here. Um, she saw me like just living my life as a straight black man. So I got a chance to go around, and she was really, and I really mean she loved. Yes, it was infatuation. I would say on the borderline of what was that movie in 1987? Fatal Attraction, because when you got to be, in order to be with me, you have to love me for who I am and be in love with me. And that's what people don't get. Because I could be in love with Sister Najah, but I don't love her for who she is. That means I just sexually want her. You know what I mean? I forget about everything that she is. She's just an object of affection. But once all the smoke is cleared, I got to deal with who she is, and I don't accept her for who she is. On top of that, if it was the other way around, like I could love her for who she is, that's when the friend zone comes into play. And then, like, but I'm not really in love with her, so I'm really not sexually attracted to her like that. You know what I mean? So in order for be with me, I told her this in the car while she was crying because I had to put her straight because she was listening to nothing what I was saying. She really didn't like me, but she didn't really understand it. And I never had sex with her because of that. Because had I had, you know, had I had done it, it would have been a hot mess. And it'd have been over for me. So with that, I told her straight up, I'm just like, you want to be with me, but you don't understand Donald Jones. You don't understand the principle of nation building. You don't understand how the devil operates in this country. You just want you and me and the big white chapel and everything else. And you don't understand that I am about when it comes to tough times, when I'm vulnerable, and it's time for you to be a woman and to protect me because in order for me to provide and do everything, I have to have a strong woman beside me, a strong black woman beside me, and you're listening to everything else and all these bad influences your way. I'm going to be looked at as the bad guy in the relationship because Donald wasn't anything. We told you about him and everything else, and I don't want that in my life. Because you know why? Because you're in love with me, but you don't love me for me. And that's why I didn't give up the sex. Because had I did it, she would have been in love with me and she would have been really connected with me at that point. But then, like, she's coming over my house. And I drive a nice car too. She would have been banging out my windows. She would have done everything, lighting my things on fire because I'm looking at this face because it'd have been a wrap. Okay. Period. I do not want that. I've worked too hard. Okay. And I cannot take a sister who's going to criticize the music that I like, that's going to criticize straight black pride movement, and going to criticize and going to support neoliberalism, like supporting Joe Biden just to get Donald Trump out of office. I can't deal with it. I'm not going to deal with it. And that's just it. All right. So you can't have this, period. You're not getting it. You're not, no. And I had to tell her this. We can stay friends, but you don't like me for me. So what am I supposed to do? You know, those days, I left those days in college, you know? So, and so to answer your question about abstinence, yes, we should practice. It really just depends on mental attraction towards one another. But if that person is not sharing that mental attraction with you, not putting in you in that masculine and feminine straight, then you know what? You need to practice abstinence until they prove you different.
All right, brother. I think you covered that very well. Um, Sister Camille, would you like to speak on that question?
Of course I would. Of course. Abstinence is definitely necessary when one, you're trying to get to know somebody in a relationship. Two, you don't want to be dipping and diving and taking on those many spirits. Like, people don't realize sex is a form of connection. I have friends out there that say, "Oh, I can have sex and not have any connection with anybody." And I'm looking at them like, "Bro, what?" So it's a physical, mental, and emotional connection. So I definitely agree with Brother Jones when he said that he told that woman that, yeah, you're infatuated with me, but you don't like me for me. And before we go down this rabbit hole, this is what's going to happen, because I have a prime example. I have a best friend that would take a chick down that rabbit hole. And it's really depressing when I hear these stories, and I'm just like, all you had to do was be honest with them. And he's like, I am, but they're still coming at me. And I'm like, just say no. You know for a fact that you're not mentally prepared for this person. So why set them up for failure? So abstinence is major in all of this. And I practice that to like the fullest. And it's necessary in one, spirit building, and it's necessary in one, relationship building. When you feel you're ready and you've gotten to know each other, yeah, go for it. But make sure once you go that round, understand, once you go down that rabbit hole, ain't no coming back.
All right, that is true. Things change once you become intimate. Sister Najee.
Everybody hit it on the nail. If we're dealing seriously with somebody, abstinence is key, because you don't want to bring about a whole new life, bring in an ancestor, because ultimately that's the goal, is to bring an ancestor back. You don't want to do that and then find out that the person, like he said, is talking about trying to vote for Biden so we can get rid of Trump. So absolutely agree.
And I will say, I'm going to say something interesting. I believe abstinence is necessary. And for brothers in the movement, brothers in the movement become the representation of the movement. So we have to be more careful than the average brother, because anything you do suddenly, as y'all talked about earlier, you become the hoteps. The hotep did this. Or if you're someone like myself who is semi public person, like I can go in certain places in this city and people will know me by name, know me as soon as they see me. Then they will judge the movement by what I do. I have to be extremely careful. But there's another thing to it. When you're dealing with a modern woman, sometimes if you, how can I put it? if they are interested in that and you put it off, that woman is gone. So and a brother shaking his head, you know what I'm talking about. So there's a balance there, and you can potentially miss out on what could be a quality relationship just because that sister's ready and you're not. And maybe that sister's not the one because of that. But I'm just saying it adds another dimension to it in this era with a lot of sisters, even though they may be conscious, still being affected by feminism and like I said, sometimes they are more ready than you may be as a man because you're trying to be careful and not do the wrong thing and be respectful and you're trying to be African. So those situations sometimes come up, and I don't think that's something that that's really talked about from the man's perspective. And our wonderful producer has asked the bombshell question of the day that nobody really wanted to answer. She said, why is anyone on this panel single, especially knowing what you want and need? Is it internal, or do we blame others for why we are single? Anybody want to volunteer for that?
I will. I definitely will. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I get asked this question a lot. I'm even in a whole singles group on Facebook, and they're like, why haven't none of y'all dated each other? And I'm like, we're just not interested in each other. So we know what we want, but it's a matter of not settling for less than what we want. That's my opinion. And I get backlash on that too. Oh, but women want this, a knight in shining armor. No. Remember, I said earlier in the show, mentally stimulate me and then lead me, and I'll come right behind you. So until I find that person, I'm not going to settle because it makes no sense. I could have been in relationships I've been proposed to, and I'm just like, I know what I want. I know what I'm destined for. I know what I deserve. So, I'm manifesting that. I'm still molding it. Just like, I manifested this life. It's coming. I feel it. So, I don't lead myself astray because I know that the right one is on his way.
All right. Mr. Jones, would you like to tackle that?
Sure. It's the same reason as Camille's reason. And Camille's reason was absolutely accurate. I'm single because I choose to be single. When you're showing me, I'm not going to settle for just any old thing. All right. And that's just Sister Camille, could you mute? Thank you so much. I'm not going to settle for just any old thing. When you settle for any old thing, then that's like you're just doing it just to say that you're doing it. You're becoming what we like to call in the single guy community purple pill. You know what I mean? You're just doing it because you want to be drug around. You just want to get married. But when you're married with somebody that you're not on the same level with, it's going to show down the road. And it's going to really show down the road when ideologies clash with one another. So I'm single and I like being single as of right now because I am making a lot of moves in my life. I own, I have stocks that are really doing good. I'm about to own a home. I got all these good things going for me. And somebody who's, not on my wavelength, going to take me off of my purpose is just going to detriment to that. It's going to be a big detriment to that, especially if they're part of organizations like Black Lives Matter, in which I've been upfront, like when women start to get to know me a little bit, I say that, I'm not down with BLM or anything like that. And then I show them the Lord Jamar video, in which it says it's not our movement, which is not our movement. But at the exact same time, I have to fend off all these feminists and their friends and everything like that else. And when you start to show me feminist energy and feminizing energies, actually, one of the young ladies that I talked about earlier in this podcast, I had to write her like she tried to bring up all these things about how I was doing things to not appease her soul, and she wants romance and longevity. And I basically wrote a letter back, very in a petty way, to say that you can't, yeah, but you can't get romance and longevity if you're giving me feminism ideologies. And I said that feminism is unsavory, and is very cold. It's not very nice, and it's sensually and sexually bankrupt. That's all it is. It's not. We cannot build with that. You know what I mean? And I gave her, and I told her I hold you more accountable than any other girl I dated, because I gave her the books, I gave her the knowledge. You know, everybody wants to read the autobiography of Malcolm X and be woke, but they can't take any lessons that Brother Malcolm did to make that transformation possible. You know, yeah, you got dog right. I be in the Facebook trenches, but you know, and I really do not care what you think, because one thing you're not gonna let me do is you're not gonna, and I don't want to say this, but I'm not. B made me, bitch made me do anything. You know what I mean? Because that's just not how I roll. I'm gonna keep coming at you with the truth, whether you like it or not, and I'm gonna tell you in a very diplomatic manner. If you don't like it, there it is. You know what I mean? They were like, you know, you can't handle a real woman. I'm just like, no, I can handle a real woman. I just haven't found her yet. You know, and obviously it's not you. And you got to keep shutting them down and keep shutting them down and keep shutting them down until they get it. And these are the same women out here who are getting, you know, who claim that they found the man of their dreams, only to be up, you know, in divorce courts or domestic violence court, unfortunately, dealing with somebody that they didn't have no business dealing with. Now, I can't blame them based off of their original standards of how they view them as masculine, but I can hold them accountable for, you know, how they discipline themselves and having a spirit of discernment, like Sister Camille talked about, you know. And I understand this thing is being too picky, but to me, it's simple as black and white. You know, do you have it or don't you have it? And I like what Cindy asked me about being too picky. There is such a thing as being too picky, and that's why I leave it very broad out here. But at the same time, you have to be adamant on where you stand. Period. If you don't stand adamant with where you stand, people will take it as a weakness, and people will try to attack you for it. And then once you see those feminist, well, coming from a male's perspective, those feminist traits that I cannot stand, then it's kind of like, well, you know, feminism is this and feminism is that. I'm just gonna shut it down, just right there, you know. And I would rather be friend zoned by the right person 20,000 times than to be caught up with the wrong person once. And that is as true as I can say it, because that person I can bear fruit with, and they're saying me that I'm not good enough. I can live with that than to be selling for one person and regretting it later.
All right, brother. Sister Najee.
I don't think that we should be thinking about complementary complementarity and relationships as if it's just, oh, I go and apply for a job. Like, if you're supposed to be with the person that destiny has for you, it's not just going to fall in your lap, especially not where we live. We are literally we're living in an insane asylum. So no, you have to be picky. Otherwise, you're going to end up with crazy people. It's necessary. So I think the notion that is being picky is like, how serious are you about Black liberation?
And I will say that it is gonna sound harsh, but being completely honest, as a black man, once you have standards, you eliminate 75% of black women that you run into. when you say I am not going to deal with a woman with a feminist mentality, I'm not going to deal with a woman that's pro LGBT, you eliminate a lot of women. And I've talked to brothers who are in or connected to our movement, and these are conversations that we have had, especially over the last couple of years. And I'm talking about brothers from late 20s to 50s. So multiple generations. And, it used to be just you could find a sister and you could mold her on certain things and you can get her to agree with certain things and you could work with her. But when you have our sisters are so pro LGBT now overall, or so scared to take a stand, and the feminism is so in the Black woman cultural space that it makes it very difficult. And and we always talk about the feminization of the Black male, which we see that's obvious, but we never discuss the masculinization of the Black female.
Is it emasculation if they aren't able to stand up for themselves? I would beg to ask that question. I don't think it's necessarily the emasculation of the Black woman in that situation.
Yeah.
If you're not able to stand up for yourself, if you're not able to think, it's not necessarily that they're being masculine. It's the socialization is forming them in such a way.
Okay, well, let me respond to that real quick. And when I'm talking about the masculinization, I'm talking about, for example, there is a way that I see a lot of Black women talk to men, that they talk to Black men, excuse me, whether it's online, in person, in my neighborhood, outside, that I don't see Black women. You don't go to your job and talk to them like that. You don't talk to Urugu like that. You don't even talk to Pedro like that. Now I've seen it. I worked around all types of people, and I've seen it increase over time. And that masculine energy is brought to the Black man from the Black woman, but it's not brought to other males. So, and when you get in a relationship, you'll see sisters, you'll see that come out of them in certain situations. And you're like, oh, this is why you were single when I found you. This is that energy that you were hiding. And now it's come out. And nobody wants to talk about it, because as a man, if you talk about it, suddenly you're a misogynist. But brothers talk about it amongst themselves. But when we try to point sisters out, that masculine, hey, you showing me that masculine energy again, then they get offended instead of working on their femininity. Just like brothers have to work on their masculinity in this society, where they're literally trying to put dresses on brothers every single day, sisters have to work on their femininity. And as a man, the bad part is you can only help her to a certain extent. That's a woman thing. So you're in a situation where there's nothing you can even do. You can either choose to deal with the sister or move along.
I wanted to piggyback on what you said, Brother Conrad, and I'm sorry to cut you off. And it's a very touchy topic when you talk about women and femininity, and because in this society, it feels like it's being policed to a certain extent. You know what I mean? So when we talk about that, when I look at certain women, especially from my perspective, Sister Camille, I can hear you, dear. Thank you. Getting back to what I was talking about, it's a very touchy topic when it talks about women and femininity, and I know what feminine looks like to me. So a lot of people will be like, well, I'm not, a lot of the women that I'm not interested in my opinion, are not feminine enough. And I don't want, and this is not to harp on any sister in this chat or anywhere else, because I've never met you before. I can't judge you or evaluate you based off of what I've seen here. But it's a big problem with me because I cannot when I look at something, I'll just be like, this is too masculine for me. I can do better, and it goes vice versa with the women and the men. You're not man enough. You can't handle certain things. You know, you can't do certain things that that you just can't get ish done. When a man gets ish done, that's when he's really a man. He just doesn't say anything about it. He doesn't explain himself. He just gets it done. When women, and the same thing goes for women. Women, I do believe that women needs to understand femininity more and hear us out. You know what I mean? When it comes to certain things, when I don't get what I need, I would have the urge to cheat, and I don't believe in cheating, so I would just break up with you. And then a lot of that, and it's not the sister's fault, but I do believe that women should, and it goes both ways. I'm not just harping on the sisters because it's not fair, but I do believe that femininity is lost within our generation greatly.
I wonder what exactly you're talking about when you're talking about femininity. And I say that there's a lack of balance when we think about being in Yoruba society, when we think about what's necessary, when we think about everything that we've had to do as Black people in order to survive, when we think about the hypersexualization of Black women, Black girls, what is femininity and why is a Black woman unable to showcase masculinity in a situation where it's necessary to survive? It's necessary to not be made a bee. And I say it to say it's, I want to say not be bit. All right, I'm not gonna say it like that. I want to say you have to be a certain kind of strong in order to get through life in this society. So I can't I can't be with a man that sees that I'm trying to be strong and is judging it as you're not being feminine. That is a turn.
Okay, brother Cameron, you want to answer that, or should I?
Yeah. You can add on. I'm gonna speak to it real quick. And I think y'all must have missed this part when I said it. That I'm gonna give a perfect example. Sisters talk about how strong they are now. But look at the Panther women. They weren't jumping up in the Panther men's faces. They were jumping up in the crackers' faces. They weren't disrupting the organization from within, except for the agents. And we know who they are. And if we don't, we'll get to that one day. They were disrupting the crackers organization. Sisters now are not disrupting the cracker. They're helping the cracker. And that's what I'm saying. And if we're in a complementary relationship and we're trying to build something, and when I come home, I have, after fighting the cracker for resources, and then I have to come home to discord in the house for sometimes reasons that I don't know because I haven't even been home. So I don't even know what's going on. I'm just trying to come in and see what's happening. And there's dissatisfaction that's expressed in a way that is challenging me. All that does is raise my testosterone because I've already been challenged out here in the street. I come home, you want to challenge me as if you are a man. And now we have conflict where what I'm coming home for is nurturing from my partner so that I can recharge and go back out here and deal with this cracker again. And
Just because someone is challenged.
Hold on,
Okay,
sis, hold on. I'm still speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an example right there. That's an example right there.
I want to add on to that, and I can see your dissatisfaction, Sister Najai, but you also
I
have
have something to say. Why can I not speak next?
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Hold on, brother. Hold on, brother.
Is it okay if I speak?
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I hadn't finished, but hold on, brother. Let the sister speak.
No, you finished. I stopped because you said you weren't done, so finish, please.
But no, I've made my point. Go ahead.
Okay. Um, bringing it back now, just because you're being challenged, it doesn't mean that it is the masculine within me that is challenging you. That's what I'm asking you of what does it mean to be feminine and what does it mean to be masculine? Just because I say, hey, you didn't do such and such at the house, that doesn't mean I'm coming to you as a man. That I'm coming to you as a person. And to say that, like, yes, there are a lot of black women that are working for Yurugu, and you can say the same vice versa. But if we're talking about a black family, we're not necessarily talking about a coconut head woman or a coconut head man. We're talking about a black woman and a black man that have a black child that are striving towards black liberation. It doesn't necessarily mean that femininity doesn't necessarily mean that I'm just supposed to be here waiting for you to come home so that I can nurture. If you've been out dealing, I'm dealing with the same thing. If we're living in this society, we're both dealing with the same thing from different perspectives because you're a man and I'm a woman, but we're still dealing with the same thing. So if we're together and I have an issue, I'm going to come to you not necessarily bucking at you as a man. I'm coming to you because you were the person that I'm supposed to come to. You're the one that came here home. So yes, I'm gonna come to you. And I wanted to, it kind of goes in sync with what somebody was talking about in the chat earlier. They said they have a problem with the amount of women that are going out and getting training, basically, whether it be firearms training or just tactical training, period. They have a problem with the amount of women. But it's like, do you want us to be feminine and die? Like, you would rather us just sit and wait and die as opposed to preparing ourselves when there's no one around protecting us. It's not as if the men have gotten together and started a SAFO and we're not allowing them to do that. We're out here by ourselves. It's a very individualistic society. So if I have to go out and get training to protect myself, that doesn't mean that I'm not being feminine. And I think to question the femininity of it is like, why are you taking the opportunity to come at me and not just seeing me as another person that needs to be able to defend themselves, especially when we think about the number of black women that are not only being raped and abducted by our own people, but having to deal with the exact same situation that you're dealing with when it comes to the police, when it comes to Yurugu.
Okay. Number one, I think you're conflating two different issues. Because I saw what that person was saying in the chat. I don't even agree with that. There's a reason why Baba Baruti and Mama Baruti had their discussion on security for men and women. So those are two different things. I saw a brother said it. It's the energy that the women come at the men with. I understand if there's a problem, I come home and the dishwasher doesn't work. You're gonna come to me and say the dishwasher doesn't work. I need you to do something. Whether I pull it out the wall or I call somebody to fix it, whatever the case may be. That's not the issue. The issue is the type of energy that a lot of black women have. That one, they can't take any perceived criticism from a black man. It doesn't even have to be actual criticism. Any perceived criticism from a black man makes black women immediately react. And it wasn't always like this. I'm old enough to remember when it wasn't like this. And when brothers started talking about it, I was looking at them like they were crazy. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I started observing it. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I see it. As far as the sisters having to defend themselves and survive and things like that, I understand that more than most. One of the things that I have studied is this whole sexual abuse situation, and I know how that affects sisters, and the fact that we have so many men who have abdicated their right in the community to their natural warrior state. I understand that aspect of it, but those are, to me, those are two different issues. We can't conflate those two things. What that person was talking about in the chat about they don't want sisters to train or whatever the case may be. No, because if you have my babies and I'm dead or in jail or I'm not there or whatever the case may be, I want you to kill that Yurugu. That's why I brought up the sisters in the Panther. That's the first thing I said. Because they were standing there on the front lines shooting back just like the brothers, but they were not jumping up in the brothers' faces. I've talked to the sisters in the Panthers that were in the Panthers back in the day. I've talked to some of those elders. It's a different energy with these sisters nowadays. And what it is, a lot of times the sisters don't see it because you're around us. It's become black female culture so much that no one will mention it to each other. The same way when brothers back in the day start basically degrading our women. And if you were the ones that wasn't degrading our women, you were basically spitting in the wind because everybody was looking at you like you were crazy.
I want to
go ahead, brother.
I've been trying to get in this thing because I got a lot to say. I want to read a quote that a friend of mine's texted me. Men in the United States are going damn near broke just to find that woman that will be his peace. I've learned that a man's peace is priceless to him. And this is a woman telling me this, a black woman from North Carolina telling me this, and she is absolutely 100% correct. So to get to where you was talking about, Sister Najee, I'm looking at my man, spirit, mind, character, and soul. We must respect each other's warrior spirit. Women do not take the time to understand masculine energy. We must be on the defense and take the time to consider how and when to approach. A man's peace is everything, in my opinion. So piggyback on what Brother Conrad was talking about, he was talking about, if he's going out there and fighting not only Yurugu, but small hats. And I fight more small hats than anything, but I do it very tactfully. I don't, take their race bait and do everything, and I use their own junk against them, but when you go against these type of people, and after the day, if I can't have peace in my home, then it's chaos because we're both coming. It's like two bulls coming at each other. You know what I'm saying? So that's in regards to what he was talking about. I see a lot of comments talking about, what is feminine. So I'm gonna give you my own definition of what femininity is. So femininity to me is anything that is attractive mentally and physically to me that puts me in a state of vulnerability. So what does that mean? So it's just like, God, dog, you're walking down the street and then you see a sister who's well represented, well, good looking and everything, but she has a mind to complement what I see. It puts me in a state of vulnerability to say, God, dog, I would really like to, if I have to protect this woman because she's going to bear good fruit. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like protecting, if you have a field and all those fields grow the best type of vegetables or even meat and cattle, and that cattle is worth millions and millions of dollars, exporting goods from all around the world. You know what I mean? Just like our home continent of Africa. Though it's like protecting a chest full of rubies. You do not want to give those up for anything or just anybody. You know what I mean? So that I equate to femininity. So anything that puts me in a state of vulnerability, that to me is feminine to me. So that's where I'm going with that. So I've dealt with a lot of sisters, and sisters, it's not your fault that you were put in this position to take on the lead of the household because this is how society designed it, especially living in a test country like the United States of America. So to wrap this all up, to put it in short, everybody has their own way of defining femininity, especially their own women, they express themselves the way they want to express themselves, and I think that's good. But you also have to understand that you have to have a general sense of how others like the general like how men generally see femininity. And for me, it's something that's for a woman sensual, delicate, something that I can protect and provide for, that naturally puts me in my masculine state. And I define that in my own way. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you being feminine, if you're in your feminine, if you're coming home with all these issues, and it could be anything, and I can hear you out, Sister J, there's a problem out there. It's up to me to not argue with you, but to be your rock steadiness in the time of the storm. So if you have a problem with me, or like something goes wrong, let's say we in a house and a multifamily house, and somebody ain't pay the rent and they're giving you a problem, you come to me, I'm gonna be the rock steadiness, and I'm just gonna get it done. You know what I mean? You may be masculine in that moment, but I'm gonna take on the feminine and just be like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. All right, we got some unruly tenants upstairs. Here's the way we're gonna go about it. That's how we coexist with one another. So that's the masculine and feminine relationship. It goes a lot deeper than what quote unquote experts say that it is. And then a lot of sisters, especially black sisters nowadays, get offended by that because they think what they showing is enough. The truth is that if what you were showing was enough, everybody would be coming at you, everybody would accept you, you would have been married and have your kids. The truth is not everybody sees it like that, and that goes for everybody on this panel and everybody in that group chat. So, what may be masculine to you, may be different for Camille, or maybe different for Sister Mello or Leia or Cindy or whoever, you know. But it just depends on it and how you discipline it, to attract the type of man that you want and desire, that's gonna build your nation, and develop everything that God has designed it for you to be. So I have my own definition of femininity, and I go by those rules of femininity. As I got older, I didn't have standards when I was 18 and 19, because I was like everybody else. I was just trying, I was just out here doing whatever until I got older, and then start seeing the divorce rates, and then I start learning different things, and then I got conscious, and this, that, and the fourth, and then my view shortened. So to harp on that, a man's peace is very important. So the world isn't fair, but that's why that's why we're a vanguard. That's why we're straight black pride. We don't conform to the world. We have the knowledge that they don't think we do, but they don't know. So to answer that question, there's a lot of things. I have my own way of defining femininity. At the same time, you no matter you have to be on that one accord, that we understand the nature of feminine and masculine and what society is trying to push, and we use that knowledge to push against the enemy, and to keep our nation not only strong, not to keep our nation protected, but to build it up stronger and gain more resources, more than we ever imagined.
Real quick, the sister Camille has to go, so I'm gonna give her the mic so she can say any words she wants to say before she leaves the discussion. So, sister, anything you want to say real quick?
I'm going to unmute my camera for this one. Hi. It seems like everyone pretty much touched on everything that I was definitely thinking of. I was reading the chats as we were going, and I definitely saw Joelle say, brothers think of feminine as curve switching, hand gestures, soft voices, and smooth skin. And it's true. It's true. And going back to what you were saying, that, you don't want to be challenged in your home, with masculinity from your woman. And I think that's where personal accountability comes in. because lack of communication, one, and personal accountability, two, because we don't communicate. Communication is lacking a lot, like, and a lot of discussions could have been nipped in the bud. A lot of arguments could be nipped in the bud if we just were more accountable, one, and communicated a little bit more. Like, when it comes to femininity, I see femininity in different forms. It ties in with, women as a whole, but men have their feminine. It's a duality, if that makes sense. We have it in us. So you can't get mad at a woman for showing a masculine side. I live alone. I got to carry these groceries by myself. So of course I'm gonna truck them. I don't have any help. So, and then there's men. I tie this in when it comes to their type of femininity. Self grooming is a form of masculine femininity. Like, I'm not gonna say I judge people, but when it comes to men, if you can't self groom, I'm looking at you like, what you doing? What are you doing in the nail salon? Why you can't do this yourself? And that's another topic, like, for later on down the line, that we, even in this COVID life that we're living, I've seen a lot of men losing their minds because they couldn't go get their hair cut. Like, what have you been doing for your 20, 30, 40 plus years of your life that you did not learn that? So that's a form of femininity in a man, that you have to be able to self-groom. But a masculine form in a woman, you have to be able to stand your own ground. So that's what I got on all of that as a whole, because it's a duality that we have to just learn how to deal with.
All right. Thank you, sister. I believe you said you have to go. Thank you for participating in the panel. Sister Najee looked like she still has something to say, so I'm gonna hand the mic back to her.
Thank you, Sister Camille. I completely agree with everything that you're saying. I too must carry the groceries, so I understand that it's not just that simple of I'm a woman, so I need to be feminine, and there is nobody to give me a trophy for doing what I need to do when it comes to having to display masculinity. When I think of femininity on a holistic scale of what the universe shows, I think of a lioness being the one that goes out and makes the kill. I think of femininity and I think of the African warrior women that were the main ones, like, we need to get these people out of here, and upholding the culture because the men were a little bit too slack with that. When I think of femininity, I don't just think soft. I think that it's a part of European socialization to assume that that's what femininity is, and it's it's so much more than just what it has been made to be. If you're a man, you have femininity as well. So I don't like the fact that it's been expressed that women are just too masculine. There is an imbalance most certainly on both sides, and there is an aggression that women hold for, like, apparent reasons. But I don't think that men should kind of like count a woman off because of that. I can see that if that's not what you like, then maybe you need to find a woman that is going to be more submissive. But I think that as a man, you should want to have that challenge. Personally, I would think that that would be, instead of the sexiness of I'm home and I'm providing you peace, maybe it's the sexiness of the fact that I challenged you intellectually and now you have to work. That's what I think.
Okay. Um, just to respond that real quick, I saw somebody put it in the chat, and I think this point has just been missed. It's all in the energy. It's all in the energy, and that's what I'll say. It's the how even more than the what, and that's something that gets missed um, overall, but especially in our personal relationships. Because I'm dealing more with our personal relationships as men and women, as speaking as two people that are trying to build something and move forward, as opposed to outside of the home. So we have been on for over 2.5 hours. And sister says, yes, brother, energy and delivery are everything. Exactly, Sister Mello. Do we have any more questions from the chat before we begin? Hold up. There's a question that says, I'm trying to find, says women that hold non-traditional women. Let's see. Women that hold non-traditional women jobs may not find it. Is that practical to look girly? I'm trying to. I think the question was talking about women who don't have traditional female jobs, and how does that affect women? But I missed the first half of the question, I think. So we're gonna bypass that unless that person wants to put that question back in the chat. Brother said it took me and my wife 7 years to figure out our communication, and have to commend them for that nowadays, because most people, if they haven't been able to figure out their communication issues in 7 years, most people would not be together. Brother Saint African asked the sister, can she define what is her definition of masculinity? So, Sister Najee, since you're the only sister left.
Immediately, I think nurturing, because I don't think nurturing is babying. I think nurturing is, I'm thinking on a holistic level. I think that being the provider, which is the term that usually is used, comes not just financially or economically. I think it also comes emotionally. I think of when I think of the perfect family, not to say perfect, but when I think of a functioning family, I think of the elder male being the person that we can go to if there's a problem within the family, if there's turmoil within the family. I'm going to go to that person, and his masculine energy is going to be calm, is going to be balanced, um, is going to provide a solution. And I don't have to fret about him not being able to figure it out for the family. That's when, like, to imagine masculinity, that's what I think about. Developing, yes. Developing, caring, nourishing. Very true.
Okay. The brother said thank you, and I agree with all of that you said.
Someone, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Someone has said the word challenge should be in no relationship. You're not building if you're competing. I don't think that challenge necessarily means competition. If I'm in school and I'm not being challenged, it's not about a competition. It's about the fact that you're not meeting my wavelength of intellect. So I don't think that is necessarily how how that should be thought about.
Okay. I didn't even.
Let me scroll back up. You got ripped off. Said the word challenge should be in no relationship. You're not building if you're competing. I don't think that you should be in competition with the person that you're supposed to be complimenting, but I do think that we should challenge each other. I think that if your goals are something that, if your destiny and your goals are something that I should be like, hey babe, did you make sure you, like, kind of like helping you out with that? And I don't think that it has to be thought of as a competition.
Okay. I don't even think of that as, that's not what I think of when I think about challenge. So I think maybe a semantics issue. Okay. There was a question of, can a woman be feminine while holding a male job position? I'm gonna let Mr. Jones handle that. Mr. Jones,
Repeat the question one more time.
the question was, can a woman be feminine while holding a male job position? And I don't know if they actually defined male job position somewhere else and I missed it.
I'm part of an organization called the National Society of Black Engineers, and you have a lot of women in a lot of male job positions in that organization. I'm going to say yes, that you can be feminine, but it's going to be very, but it just depends on who the sister is. So, if you're a sister who works for, let's just say, Northrop Grumman, and you're down in DC and you're an electronics engineer and you're getting paid $185,000 a year, and you're living in Roslyn, which is like a very rich. For those of y'all in DC, y'all know where Roslyn is in Virginia, and you're living in one of those condos, and you're working nonstop, and you're dealing with a guy that you really like, and you're kind of scaring them away, because here's what they do to sisters in the corporate arena. They push equality and all these types of buzzwords and everything like that, but sisters get overworked, they put too much on their plate, and they overwork the women to death. So it's just kind of like she can't do what she want to do because she has an MBA from Harvard. Now, not to say against any educated sisters. I've met sisters who are very educated in terms they went to Cornell, Harvard for their MBA. Very talented sisters going to these corporate jobs and basically getting burnt out. And not only are they getting burnt out, they're taking on more. They're getting all these awards and everything like that. And you know what I mean. And they're coming home and they're tired, and it's just a hot mess. And then they got to deal with the corporate bureaucracy, dealing with Yorugos and small hats at the same time. They got to deal with the Yorugos who climb up the ladder and the small hats that's dangling the meat. So, is it hard for that? Yes. And most of these women, going back to what I said earlier, are what, if anybody read Sister Sir Rod Ali's book, The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman, and then there's a counter book to that, The Black Woman's Guide to Understanding the Black Men. She talks about this being the class 2 female, the class 3 female, where the class 2 female is very malleable and very, hey, I just go to church. I don't want anything better for myself. You know what I mean? I just want a nice, simple life. And then the class 3 woman is basically the bougie woman. She likes to go to Cabo and Brazil and the Maldives Islands and everything else. You know what I mean? And the corporate type of woman falls under the class of class 3 or class 2 or class 3. So yeah, I'm reading Sister Mello. She's a horrible example. I understand where Sister Mello is coming from, but understand that it's the content of the book and not the person behind the book, in which I'm talking about. And we've had discussions about that. But when we're talking about this specific topic, the corporate lady is dealing with class 2 or class 3, and she's dealing with that bureaucracy on the way up. And it's hard to get a woman like that who's been given orders all day. She's managing teams. She's managing computer scientists. She's managing accountants. She's got to report to these white folks. You know, that's basically running her life and paying all her bills, and she's gaining all these cars and all these properties and everything like that, but she forgot what it's like to be a woman because she's basically been given a man's job. You know what I mean? And in the process, let's say I'm working at that company and she's targeting me because I'm spilling red pill knowledge or masculine knowledge, which negates the whole company's direction. So I got to really be careful and shut my mouth, you know, and I got to just go on with that. So, she usually, if she ends up in a relationship, she ends up with a purple pill simp or another, somebody that she can control because that's all she knows. But it just depends on the position which the sister has. And, if she's more of a manager, more than likely she's going to be masculine. If she's just in a role position like, yeah, poor guy. Yeah, exactly right. But accountant, whether he's an accountant or not, you know what I mean? Like it just depends if she's a role player or if she's a manager. But to answer that question, yes, a woman can be feminine, but it depends on two factors. Number one, what type of job does she have? And number two, if she's in charge, how much charge does she have? And does that affect her personal life?
All right, brother. I knew you would cover that. That's why I left that to you. I have nothing to add other than just to reiterate that
Purple
it
pill.
makes. I mean, it can be done. Absolutely, a sister can be. It depends on your personality. I'm a type of person that I compartmentalize. So if you can compartmentalize and leave what you do outside the door, yes, it's not an issue. Um, Everybody doesn't have that type of personality, so that's an individual thing. Of course, I say it's probably more difficult, but everything in this society is difficult, especially when you're trying to be African. So we're gonna take this to 11. So that's about 13 and a half more minutes. And we have any more questions in the chat before we begin to wrap it up? Don't everybody speak at once.
What's a purple pill simp? Can I answer that?
Hold on for a second, because that's a whole. You know what? That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
We're just gonna leave that there. That's a whole nother discussion.
If you want me to answer that question, hit me up on the Instagram and then I'll give you an answer. 7779311, which is one of my favorite songs. So yeah.
Yeah, I just realized what that is. Yeah, that's wow, that's old. It is a responsibility though. Yes, it is difficult, but is it not worth it to your sanctuary? Sister Spirit, Mind, Character, Soul, can you elaborate? Oh, she said I already told it. Oh, okay. Let's see. No one else?
Blue Jersey at BLUJERSEY 1914. Blue Jersey 1914. BLUJERSEY 1914. And just request me and then we can have a discussion offline. I have no problem with that.
All right, brother. So I think we have had a quality discussion. I think we have had some understanding. We have touched on a lot of ideas, and hopefully we didn't make anyone mad that they won't talk to us again. I've done that before. Those who know me know that sometimes I can be abrasive, but I think that this has been a quality discussion. I think we have brought a little bit of understanding and had some wonderful dialogue. I'm sure most of you all will agree if you're still here. And the thing I wanted to do is to open up a space for Black men and Black women to be able to speak to each other truthfully, but respectfully. And I don't see enough of that happening, whether it's the truthful part or the respectful part. Especially, I don't see either happening, being completely honest. So what I am going to do, I am going to let each of the panelists give their final thoughts. Um, I'm going to let Mr. Jones go first because I'm going to let Sister Not. I'm probably going to let Sister Najee close us out. So, Mr. Jones, any final thoughts?
Well, I enjoy this conversation that we had. I think as a community and as a vanguard that we need to have more discussions like this. And the one thing that I want us to explicate is that we should, when it comes to discussions like this, I was very adamant at first, just to take the gloves off and just come at it straight. But after a couple of minutes, I felt more comfortable with myself and just being honest of what I think of masculine feminine relationships is, especially in the Black community, how we've been divided as a community, and understanding certain things. And anybody that follows me on Facebook, Twitter, and Saint African wants a definition on the purple pill simp. I'm going to respect your time, brother Conrad, and not and I tell him to just hit me up, because if I can explain that, but you told me to save that for another discussion, so I'm gonna do exactly just that. But you know, when we talk, but I will say this, you know, us as Black men, if you don't understand, like, I took some time understanding the laws of attraction, and then when I did, and then how it connected back to Africa and the ancestors and all that, it really made life easier for me, in terms of filtering out the type of women that I want and the people that I should be around. So the one thing that I want to take from the discussion and leave with you guys tonight is you should communicate more and often. And when somebody's opening up to you, understand, especially from a male's perspective, that they're coming out and they're being vulnerable to you. I don't look at it as being soft. All right. I look at it as, I got to come out and I have to do this. That's how I judge a woman. If you can't handle my vulnerabilities, if you're just going to say, well, this is how I really feel. And in somebody like me, I have to come out and I have to say it, and I have to say it discreetly, and you just throw it away. I have to throw you away. Because imagine if I was in a situation and then I have to, you're my rock, and then my rock does nothing but makes the situation worse. That's how brothers end up on drugs, alcohol, and in mental institutions. You know, that's one of my biggest fears. So, in essence, we should respect each other's vulnerability level. And then if you're really in love with that person and think that that person has a destiny, you'll listen carefully instead of just saying, well, and have a liberal mindset. There's a difference between liberal and liberated. You know what I mean? Liberal mind says, well, that's nice and everything, but I don't believe you. You know what I mean? And then, you know, the women in this society, not to say for any women here or you, Sister Najee, gonna tear you up in a group chat with her girls. You see what he said, doing all this and that and the other. You know what I mean? That's how nations get destroyed. All right. Especially, I can stab you with the sword, but the pen destroys nations. So understand, in order to build a nation, we have to communicate better. And Black men, not to say that we're soft, but you got to look and weed out who you trust, and that's who you become vulnerable to. So that's all I have to say. I'll be for Hody, everybody, and have a good night.
All right, brother. We appreciate that. Sister Najee, any last thoughts?
Everything that the brother just said, I think that we need to give each other more time and patience when it comes to what we're dealing with. I think that we are overall doing a good job when it comes to the conscious community. Looking online, I see a lot of people standing up against the quote unquote gender war. From what on my page, I see people standing up against it. And I think that we just have to keep it going.
All right. That was succinct, much more succinct than I was ready for, to be honest. And so I will say very quickly, as a member of Straight Black Pride movement that as black men and black women, we have to understand we are on the same side in a war against Europeans, Asians, and Arabs. And as long as we understand who the actual enemy is, we can win. The enemy is not the person in your home or your bedroom. And if you are sleeping with the enemy, then you have a bigger problem. But in fact, you're probably not going to listen to the show if you're sleeping with the enemy. But the reason I changed the picture for this discussion to Robert F. Williams and Mabel Williams is because they're both armed. They're both facing in the same direction. And they're both facing that same enemy. And if you know their story, you know that they had to leave the country together. They had to travel around the world. They were banned from coming home. Their lives were put on the line together. They built communications apparatus together, newspapers and radio shows and whatnot to teach the people. They did everything together as a black man and a black woman. And they are, to me, one of the ideals of what black men and black women can do together, even in the face of overwhelming oppression from something as powerful as the United States government. And so as we are the inheritors of this movement, the inheritors of African centeredness, the inheritors of those who resist racism, white supremacy, we always have to understand who the real enemy is and who our complements are as our only friends. The black man has no other friend but the black woman. And the black woman has no other friend other than a black man. And so I want to thank everyone that participated in the chat, everyone that was on the panel. Salute to Mr. Jones, and a big giant thank you to Sister Najee. I greatly appreciate your insight. And of course, Sister Camille had to leave, but thanks to her for coming on and thanks to everyone for being respectful. I think we made it through with no N words and no B's and H's. So I thank you all. We kept it straight black pride all the way through. Thanks to everyone in the chat. And with that, I say Abibi for Hodie and straight black pride.
Straight black pride.
Abibi for Hodie.
For those who want to hit me up, I'm looking for your notification now, so I can explain that definition. See you later, everybody.